Everybody, this is Dream. Today we have a 6-game slate here on DraftKings. This slate actually starts at 6 o'clock, so just be aware of that. Um, Actually, a 7-game, I'm sorry, not 6. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get into the big injury for today. There's a ton of injuries. We're going to start with the Charlotte Hornets with Smith Jr. out, questionable and Ball out. For the Wizards, Morris is questionable, Goodwin is questionable, and Wright is out. For the Pistons, Cunningham, Stewart, and Bay are all out. For the Kings, Monk is questionable and Murray is probable. For the Heat, Bam is questionable, Vincent is questionable, Dedmon is questionable, Butler is out, Hero is out, and Robinson is doubtful. For the Cavs, Kevin Love is doubtful. For the Rockets, Sengun is questionable, Porter Jr. is doubtful, Fernando's out, and Tate is out. For the Grizzlies, Morant is out, Bane is out, and Jackson Jr. is out. For the Nets, Claxton is out. For the Nuggets, the Joker is out, Murray is out, and Gordon is questionable. For the Spurs, Podol is questionable, Vassell is questionable, Sacred is questionable, and Collins is out. And for the Lakers, LeBron is questionable, and Davis is probable. So there are a ton of injuries today. Obviously, there's a lot that we're going to have to learn as the day progresses to really be able to fill out the lineup real good. But we do know some of the stuff, so that does help us today. And we're going to start with Tyus Jones because we do know that Morant is out. He's been really good when Morant's been out, and his price is just too cheap today for this situation. He is going up against Brooklyn, who does tend to be pretty good defensively sometimes. But he should be fine here. Even with Kyrie back, I think he'll be okay. Then we'll look at Nishan Highland for Denver. Now Murray is out and Joker is out, and he's played more minutes last few games. His price has popped up here, but he's in a good spot, and I do think he's a good option on the slate. Then we'll look at Jaden Ivey here for Detroit against Sacramento. It should be a high-scoring game. Now his price point has popped up, lately. With Cunningham out, he gets a lot more run. As you can see, his minutes have spiked up, and so I expect him to have a really solid game here. Though his price makes him, a decent play because he does have big upside, but I don't think he's a top-end play. Then we're going to look at Hami Diallo here for Detroit. Now, he's a guy that doesn't play a ton of minutes typically, but with all the injuries, there is a possibility that he starts. So he is a super value play today, a Hail Mary play, if you will, that you want to see if he ends up starting. Because if he does end up starting, he would be a good play on the slate, especially at his minimum price. Then Alec Burks for Detroit as well. He's an interesting play today. He's only played a few games so far this season, but his price is pretty good. And if he can get over 25 minutes, he would be a really good play on the slate. However, he is pretty scoring dependent, so you do have to keep that in consideration. Then Steph Curry for Golden State. He's my top overall play when it comes to price because he's been extremely good lately. He's had a couple off games, but he's got a good game here against Houston where he should be able to just throw up 40 points or something in an easy game, and I expect him to have a big game here and get a lot of shots as well. Kerr does say that there's full complement of minutes today, so obviously we'll have to make sure that doesn't change, but if he plays he should play the whole game. Same kind of goes for Klay Thompson. He's also in a great spot here. His price point has come up slightly, but he's a good spot here, I think. Then we'll look at Draymond Green here real quick for Golden State as well. He's been pretty good lately, though. He just hasn't had that big 50 fantasy point game that we're used to with him, and that's why his price is still pretty low. So he is viable on the slate, but he's not a super awesome option. Then Eric Gordon for Houston with all the injuries there and potential injuries, he could definitely get a lot of run. He's been getting lots of run the last few games. He is very scoring dependent, but he is pretty cheap, and he does have tendency to have gigantic games. Then we'll look at Bojan Bogdanovic here for Detroit. His price has come down actually a little bit from the last couple games, but overall he's a decent play on the slate. With all the injuries, he should get a lot of run if they can keep it close at all, which is definitely possible against Sacramento. Then we'll look at Bruce Brown Jr. for Denver. I think he's got a lot of upside in this game with the guys out, though his price has come up quite a bit, so you have to keep that in mind, but he has some upside in this matchup with injuries. Dylan Brooks is a guy that I really struggled to list him here because he really doesn't hit over 30 fantasy points, but 3 times this season so far. However, he is gonna get all the run he can handle with Morant out and a couple other guys hurt. So I expect him to probably have one of those games where he beats that expectation. That said, it's just he seems like he caps out at around 30 or so. Then we're gonna look at Brandon Clark here, and I really like him if he ends up starting, which seems like a possibility today. He's been playing up and down game to game, but I think if he gets a full complement of minutes like he did a couple games ago, he should have a potential for a big game here. Then we'll look at DeAndre Jordan. Now, he's not a great play but his price point, and he's going to be starting again as usual, likely at least. And he's been, he's still getting, 5 or 6 rebounds each game since he's been playing, over 20 minutes. But again, he does have tendency to just not do much. So he's a very old guy in the league, so that's kind of the issue with him. And his minutes are kind of capped. Then we're looking at Jalen Duren, and he's a very similar situation to Jordan, where he's kind of capped at around 25 minutes at the most. But if he starts today, he's definitely a viable option to potentially get a double-double. He's a little bit safer than Jordan, but he's in a similar situation overall. And then for the Jared Allen here for Cleveland. Now, either Cleveland guy, either him or Mobley are both viable today with the injury to Kevin Love. Both of them did really well in the last game against Charlotte, and I kind of expect them to do good here today. Now, it is kind of dependent on whether Bam plays. If Bam plays, I think that they're less ideal, but if Bam doesn't play, then I do like him. Same with Porzingis. He has absolutely just been on a tear lately. In the last 4 games, he's had 3 over 49 fantasy points. His price has popped up a little bit as a result, but he does have upside in this matchup against Charlotte, who's just not very good, and I expect him to have some potential in this matchup. Overall, this slate is kind of wonky. Lots and lots of injuries, lots of stuff we're going to have to figure out. Unfortunately, we don't know that information yet, so we can't, make good decisions at this point. But overall, those injury situations will clear up as the day goes on, and hopefully give us a good idea on who the best options to use. But I definitely like a lot of the players in this Pistons game, just because some of them are so cheap and same with the Rockets and the Grizzlies. All 3 of those teams seem to have some nice upside. The Heat are going to potentially have a whole bunch of guys out too. The problem with the Heat is that all their players really went way up in price. You could make a good argument for Kyle Lowry today, though, even though his prices popped up because he might go for another triple-double. But I do think that that's pretty risky. So with that said, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Make sure to check out the Discord, and have a nice day, guys.